Eshani, aka Total Makeup Junkie 101, and welcome to Holiday Hoopla. If you guys have followed my channel for a while, you guys know that I love holiday makeup collections. Every year, right around the holidays, when every brand releases their big value sets and their big palettes, I go a little crazy and I buy a lot of them just because I like to come on here and review them for you. 2 years ago, I called it my Holiday Review Palooza. Last year, it was Holiday Review Extravaganza. And this year, it's going to be Holiday Hoopla. It's really difficult coming up with good names that go with the word holiday. So there it is for you guys, Holiday Hoopla. This year, we are going to kick it off by discussing the first big holiday release. This is the Urban Decay Naked Ultimate Basics palette. Now I know some of you guys are probably thinking, Eshani, this is not a holiday product. It doesn't have the word Vice palette on it, which is true. We are really accustomed to Urban Decay releasing a Vice palette around the holidays, and I don't think they're releasing one this year. At least I haven't seen any hype, I haven't seen any previews, and it's already almost October, and usually the Vice palettes come out in September. So I am thinking that this is probably going to be the best that we're going to get out of Urban Decay this holiday season. I could be wrong. I would love for them to prove me wrong, but for now, this is the new Urban Decay palette that we have. It is a permanent palette, so I guess technically it's not a part of a limited holiday collection, but you know what? This is a great gifting palette. Here we have the box that the palette comes in, and then here we have the actual palette itself. It is really, really beautiful. Urban Decay never lets us down in terms of their packaging. I mean, this is stunning. It is actually like embossed naked, like it's raised off the palette, and it is textured. It's so elegant looking. This palette retails for $54. I picked mine up off the Sephora website, but you can also purchase it on urbandecay.com and I'm sure Ulta. Like I said, this is a permanent product to the Urban Decay collection, so if you are flooded like I am with new holiday releases and this is something that you want but you don't think you can afford it right away with all of the other limited edition things coming out, you can purchase this anytime. The palette itself is magnetic, and then it opens up with a really, really big mirror, and then inside you are getting 12 shadows and 1 brush. You can see, since the brush is still in its plastic, I haven't actually used it, but it is a flat, short-handled brush. On one side, you're getting a flatter kind of shader brush, and then on the other side, you're getting a small smudger brush. Now, looking at the palette itself, I know it doesn't particularly look exciting, it's not colorful, it's not shimmery, it's not necessarily a unique product, but that's kind of what Urban Decay was going for. This is literally your ultimate naked basics matte palette, anything that you can pull in with any of your other shimmery eyeshadow singles or your other shimmery palettes. Or if you are just a matte eyeshadow person, you love yourself a good matte shadow look, this is a perfect palette just to use by itself. Before I discuss more about the texture of the palette as well as my thoughts on the color selection and everything, let's go ahead and jump into swatches of everything you get in this palette. Let's go ahead and swatch the first row. From left to right, we have Blow, Nudie, Commando, Tempted, Instinct, and Lethal. While most of this palette is completely matte, that first shade Blow, which is that light cream color, does have a slight satin shimmer finish. And here's the second row in the palette. From left to right, we have Pregame, Extra Bitter, Faith, Lockout, Magnet, and Blackjack. I really like this row overall. Every color was very, very pigmented. I didn't have anything to complain about with it. Discussing the actual texture of these shadows, these are very, very smooth to the touch. If you were to stick your finger in it, it literally feels like butter. They are very, very pigmented. They're really easy to build and blend, but because these are so soft and finely milled, they will kick up a lot of powder. If you are someone who likes to just dig your brushes into palettes and doesn't like excess fallout or anything like that, you probably won't like this formula. The pigmentation on pretty much every single one of these colors is really, really good. I mean, I didn't have any problems building up color payoff with any shade. From a quality perspective, I definitely think everything in this palette is top-notch quality. It's exactly what you would expect from Urban Decay shadows. I have heard some people have trouble blending Urban Decay matte shadows because they can tend to sort of stick and maybe skip on your eyes a little bit. And I did have that problem with some of the darker shades. If I was really building and blending a lot, sometimes they would tend to skip and I would have to extra blend them out. But the lighter shades and the mid-tone shades didn't have that problem for me. I did use a lot of the colors from this palette in my eye look today. I did incorporate some more shimmery shadows on the lid, but as a transition, outer corner, crease, it's all this palette. One thing I'm not crazy about with this palette is the color selection, in the sense that I feel like a couple of these shadows are almost repeated within the same palette. For example, the shades Nudie and Commando, they look exactly the same on my skin tone. And the shades Faith and Lockout also look really, really similar. For there only being 12 colors in this palette, I kind of wish that Urban Decay did a little bit more of an extensive job in just differentiating the colors a little more. I did want to show you guys a quick side-by-side of this palette next to my all-time favorite neutral matte palette. This is my Viseart Neutral Matte #1 shadow palette. I'll just say it, packaging wise, the Viseart one is very, very standard, almost cheapy plastic packaging. The Urban Decay is nice and weighty. It's very, very nicely made. There's no doubt about that. Here's a side-by-side for you guys so you can see the actual colors that you get in the Viseart palette next to the Urban Decay Ultimate Basics palette. They're similar, definitely, but they're not exactly the same. You do get, you know, a black, a light cream color, kind of a brown. You do get that rusty orangey color in both palettes. So they have similar vibes. I will say that the Viseart definitely overall just leans a lot more warm tone. There aren't as many cool tone shades in here, whereas the Naked Ultimate Basics, you are getting these kinds of purpley colors along with the gray. But then of course the incorporation of this very, very orangey brown still gives it a good balance of cool and warm. The Viseart, just in my opinion, is a lot more warm toned. You are getting some grays down here, but just overall it leans a lot more warm. Now actual quality wise, I do still prefer my Viseart palette. I think the quality on this one is absolutely top notch, super, super simple to blend. You do get some powder kick up with this, but not quite as much as you get with the Urban Decay. But for some reason, I find the Viseart one a lot easier for me to blend and build. Sometimes, like I said, the Urban Decay one can get a little patchy and it can skip a little. I never have that problem with the Viseart. And I'm sure at this point in the video, some of you guys are wondering, why are you even comparing these two? The prices aren't even really comparable because this Viseart one is $80 versus the $54 over here. But honestly, I think if you're going to invest in something like this, which is going to be an everyday go-to palette, you're gonna probably want to pull it in with any other eye look you do. This is something where I do think quality makes a difference. I definitely find myself reaching for the Viseart one, even though I've had this sitting on my vanity for the past week and a half. I've only really used it about, I don't know, 5 times. Every other time I really just want to reach for my Viseart. It gives me much better looks. I'm so much more comfortable with this palette and I just prefer it. I personally prefer the color selection of the Viseart one as well, just because I do feel like you're getting a lot more of a nice variety. You're not getting the purples that you are in this palette, but you are getting a chocolate brown, which is something that's not in the Urban Decay, which I thought should be. Okay, now I want to get into some nerdy technicalities is what I'm kind of going to call this. This is going to be a little bit more of like a price breakdown, the kind of technical section. of the video. So the Naked Ultimate Basics, like I said, this is a $54 palette. You are getting 14.4 grams of shadow total in this palette. Each pan has 1.2 grams, which is a little bit smaller than each individual Urban Decay shadow. That breaks down to $3.75 per gram of shadow in this palette. Now for the Viseart palette. This is an $80 palette. It's pricey, I know, but you're getting 24 grams of product in this palette. 24 grams versus the 14.4. So that's 10 grams more. That means that you are getting 2 grams of shadow in each of these pans, and you are paying $3.33 per gram of shadow in this pan. So while yes, there is an initial price difference, 80 versus 54, at the end of the day, you're getting so much more product in the Viseart palette. I prefer the color selection. I prefer the overall look I get out of this palette. I definitely don't want you guys to think that I dislike this palette at all. I think it is a very, very good palette. But I think if you want even a step above this, the Viseart one is just, it's amazing. Just something for you guys to keep in mind. I really hope you guys liked this review slash comparison video. I definitely wanted to come on here and give you guys my comparison, because if I were to just review this palette, I have nothing bad to say about it, but I do think there's a step above it. Ultimately, I feel like if you're going to shell out $54 on a palette like this, you may as well shell out the extra 20 bucks and get something that, in my opinion, is infinitely better. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are interested in watching any of my other holiday videos, my holiday hoopla playlist will be in the description box down below, so don't forget to check there. Thank you guys so much for watching, supporting, and subscribing. Make sure you're subscribed, because I'm going to have a bunch of bonus videos coming your way really soon. So I will see you guys in my bonus video on Saturday. I'll see you then. Bye. Since I am of a tanner complexion, all of these work as highlighters, and they all look, we have a nice variety of brands, some more smaller or newer brands to Sephora, or something you may